real quick. And Barbara, I appreciate you introducing me as a young man. Things are changing quickly for me in my late 40s. German background a little bit here, so I apologize for my appearance. I have a hard head, so many Germans do, and we're getting through all that and a few other things, so it's all good. But number one, I want to say just thanks for the invitation again and the opportunity to talk about the history of the part of history I get to experience as a human being being on this earth for just a short period of time. It's institutional knowledge that we carry across our generations. And that's special for your group. It's special for us as well. It's the same mentality we have in wildlife conservation and management in Parks and Wildlife Department as well as on the Kerr WMA. So I was told I have about 30 minutes, so I prepared a couple hours. There's so much to talk about and there's so much to share. I did pick a few things that we'll go through today, and please, Barbara, tell me if I'm running out of time and we need to get moving. That's fine. It's okay. I have a lot I can share and glad to do it. So today, just that overall topic, that perspective we carry. The Kerr WMA has been online with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department since 1950. So we're celebrating that 75th anniversary this year. I'll say it at the beginning of this and again at the end. October the 3rd, if you'd like to come out, we are holding a wildlife seminar. Starts at 9 a.m., ends at 4 p.m. We will be providing lunch that day. We'll do a tour of the WMA. We'll talk about a lot of history. I have a video we plan to unveil that day, just going back in time, as well as covering a lot of wildlife topics, most centered around white-tailed deer that day. So if you're interested, get with us. Make sure you call ahead and RSVP. So today it's kind of wire and fire. And before I get to wire and fire and what that means to me or anybody in this room, I want to go into a little bit of history of the agency, the Parks and Wildlife Department, and what wildlife management areas are and where they started. Wildlife management areas are a group of properties that function in the Wildlife Division for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. The first wildlife management area in Texas was the Sierra Diablo Wildlife Management Area, established in 1946. And you see that WMA become established really to gain knowledge and understanding and protection of the desert bighorn sheep, a very famed wild species in Texas, and one that's encountering a lot of issues and problems up until today. That's some of the foundational things that wildlife management areas encompass is protection of wildlife species as well. In doing so, we've grown over time, currently around 50 wildlife management areas in Texas, encompassing about 750,000 acres. A little walk in time back, what our primary mission is and covers is wildlife research and demonstration. So not only do we conduct wildlife research and learn about foundational principles, we come and talk to groups just like you, or we provide seminars on our WMAs, or we publish information, technical reports, scientific articles. That's part of our process in operations. And if you look at the state of Texas, those are our research and demonstration sites that kind of serve as the house by ecoregion for many other wildlife management areas. That's that look across Texas. And then this is a quick look at the number of wildlife management areas out there in the state of Texas. Varying degrees of wildlife research, very much the institutions are created by ecoregions, so you have natural resource issues that differ here in the Hill Country than they would in West Texas or in North Texas or in South Texas, if that makes sense. You have different things happening, but our program's relatively the same in how we're housed. So the Kerr WMA, which I'm representing today, is part of the Edwards Plateau Project, as Barbara introduced a minute ago. Kerr and Mason Mountain, I've worked on both. Those are the WMAs in our project. And so I want to kick this off a little bit, just real quickly talking about ecosystems, because that's going to be a theme throughout my talk today. And if you come see us, it's always going to be a theme in what we discuss, because it applies to how we manage wildlife and how we manage land, and land health is a part of that. What is an ecosystem? Ecosystems, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but let's just say they are complex. Just roughly speaking, we're talking about terrestrial systems, which is wildlife management, land management, or aquatic systems. There's also a whole ecosystem there. Point being of all of this, it's a very complex piece of conservation and management. And at the bottom down there, I just want to simply employ the idea that they are tied and connected together over time in many different ways, from water cycles, mineral cycles, etc. They're all tied together, but they are complex. As a human being, we only understand parts of it, okay? And there's a quote right there from Haldane: ecological systems are not only more complex than we think, they're more complex than we can think. There's a lot going on out there. So that all said, I want to introduce the idea of ecosystems management and the mantra we take with managing land and how we deal with wildlife and wildlife conservation, taking that ecosystems baseline as a foundation and putting management into it. How does that work across time for us? Simple way to say it, it's a process that leads to a product. And we take a group of raw materials like soil and sunlight and rainfall, and we turn it into a wildlife product. We manage it over time into products. In doing that, we have lots of influences and variables along the way. If you go pre-European man in Kerr County, there's a lot of natural ones that occurred prior to us being here. Wildfire and bison and all those different things that made a landscape look like what it did when we got here, our ancestors got here. In today's world, when we're managing what is frankly a fragmented landscape in Texas, we have our man-made things. And in ecosystems management, the idea is taking the tools that we have today in today's management operations and applying them on that landscape, emulating a lot of the natural things that occurred prior to European settlement. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to introduce Aldo Leopold. Many of you are very well aware of Aldo. Aldo made this statement in the 1930s about tools and man. Same tools can be used to restore what heretofore destroyed a lot of habitats, the axe, cow, plow, fire, and gun. That's that institution that we have and we carry on the WMA in many places in Texas. Ecosystems management also acknowledges a lot of other things that can be used for management. And the question here is, good or bad? Are they good or are they bad? Well, the answer is it depends. Everything from high fencing, supplemental feeding, predator control, all those different things. Use of herbicides or not, they're all tools that we can use or not use to manage landscapes and manage wildlife. So let's dive into a little bit of history here. This is where you'll perk up. Sorry to get through some of that. That's important, though, to understand where I'm coming from. And you all in this room could give this part of the program for me. I'll just tell you that right now. So I'm speaking to the choir. But landscape-wise, the history of us in Kerr County, millions of years ago, very simply said, you would find this landscape in basically a shallow sea. Basically, so that's where we got all that limestone base that we walk on every day. Thousands of years ago, the earth cooled a little bit. We find the Edwards Plateau primarily in what is termed a coniferous type of a forest, so lots of spruce trees and things like that. We get into today's European man-influenced period of time. Hundreds of years ago, we find the plateau, this part of the plateau, and primarily an oak savanna, grass and a few trees. And that's really about it. Lots of fire out there, etc. We'll talk about some of that. And presently, we see a lot of ash, juniper, or cedar in the hill country in the Edwards Plateau. And there's a reason why we have a lot of it in this country. And we'll walk through that with a little bit of history. Prior to 1840, Kerr County, these are records that you all have and you're all very familiar with. We had buffalo, antelope, prairie chickens, wild longhorns in Kerr County. They were here. In the early 1800s, Apache and Comanche Indians were part of this system. They were the stewards of this land at that period in time, if you want to put it in that perspective. 1856, y'all know more about this one than I do. The Boneyard Massacre occurs in West Kerr County. By the 1880s, we see increasing settlement of the region. And by 1880 and 1902, you see some institutions start to thrive or become established. And that is the YO Ranch, established by Captain Charles Schreiner, and the Stowers Ranch across the road or the street from the Kerr Wildlife Management Area, is established in 1902. As part of all that, Kerr County becomes established in 1856. Kerrville, or what was named, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, was Carrsville, named county seat named in honor of Major James Kerr, or Carr. James Carr never really actually set foot in Kerr County, is my understanding. A friend of Joshua Brown, an early settler that named this community. And by 1860, we see a thing starting to change. So the mid to latter 1860s, things start to really change due to our movement into this area. Human population was about 600 people at that period in time, and we had a lot of livestock, around 4,000 head of livestock in the county. A little over 1,100 sheep was the census at that time. In 1882, and as I kind of named this program, Wire or Fire, you'll understand a little bit more about that in a bit as I get through this. The first barbed wire fence goes up in Kerr County. And in 1897, and I'm going to go through a couple of these things, Henry Hahn, the bottom right there, Henry Hahn in 1950, he wrote a report. This was the first thing that Kerr Wildlife Management Area did. Henry Hahn was a biologist. If you look up Henry Hahn, you see him involved in a lot of the deer census and deer management issues in the 1950s and 60s. He was a biologist that worked on the Kerr for a period of time. But his job was to go interview all of those that he could find that worked or lived on the property that would become the Kerr WMA, and talk to them about what they saw, what they learned, what happened across their lifetimes. And a few of these are quotes from that report. In 1897, Sam Tomerlin reports that area was an open grassland. Cedar posts were difficult to find since the growth of cedar was restricted to heads of canyons. Prior to 1900, cedar was only found in small patches of 5 to 10 acres in this part of the county. 1882, this one's from you, Irene. An article you wrote from Thomas Moore regarding their desire to construct a heart cedar log home near Indian Creek, which is just south of Ingram. This one I always find hilarious. It's always kind of funny, is that we got to hurry because in 6 months we're going to run out of that cedar. So think about that a little bit, just how different things were at that time, for that kind of anxiety to come across in a news article or an interview. A little bit more, this was from Isaac Zumwalt, the same report of Henry Hahn. When my parents lived on what would be the Kerr area, the range was still in an open grassland with widely scattered shrub oaks. Cedar was restricted to canyons and draws. And Sam Tomerlin was quoted as, "We saw cattle get down with the creeps and die in grasses which stood 4 to 6 feet tall." Primarily a grassland out here. Much different system than we see today. You kind of move the needle a little bit, and you can imagine from a livestock paradigm, it's a paradise, if you will, of groceries to stock livestock and sell livestock, grow livestock, and make money. That's our foundation in Kerr County. Livestock's a big driver and set the tone where we are today, livestock management. And at this period of time, what will become the Kerr WMA from 1900 to 1950, the Kerr's owned by about 13 different landowners over that period of time. And this kind of walks through just some excerpts of what we see. Open range, as I've talked about already. The first privately owned cattle in 1897 were driven from Leakey to the headwaters of the Guadalupe River. 1919, lots of livestock were raised for the U.S. Army, and by 1924, you see the ownership of Robert Real running cattle and sheep and goats in this area. Around 5,000 head just in this general area right there. Lots of mouths. So in the 1920s, as we move through this a little bit, you start to see things change from what European settlement saw, the numbers of livestock moving into the region, lots of mouths eating all those groceries, and things start to change pretty dramatically. In the 1920s, you see quotes like, "failed to succeed in the ranching business," tall bunch grasses were becoming greatly reduced, and even Moody Seagrave saying in 1930 he was unable to meet his financial obligations from the livestock industry there. It was becoming impractical. This rangeland wasn't made for that kind of turnover. We don't get that kind of rain. We don't have that kind of soil sort of things. And in 1940, for the Kerr here, Daniel Moran, he purchases that land base out there in West Kerr County, which would mostly become the Kerr, establishes also Moe Ranch, what becomes Moe Ranch later. He runs several head of cattle, sheep and goats, leases a lot of it out. One of the last leases that was had or arranged was with the Fossler and Klein family in the 1940s. And this is November 14th, November 28th. You can see the moves they made in numbers of livestock. And by fall of 1946, he's quoted as saying none of the stock did well. And they were all forced to make reductions in the number of livestock. All livestock were eventually removed. And so that grazing thing, we can quote a few more times. What the Kerr area basically, when it becomes established by Texas Parks and Wildlife in 1950, Bill Armstrong always said it best, and he was great at capturing just quick words and intensive statements. He would say, "Well, the Kerr was a well-used piece of land." And that's just a fact. That's a fact. So we've kind of gone through some of those things, and that's probably a best way to put it. But the livestock part of that was no longer becoming as profitable as it was. And we're dealing with a pretty sensitive system here. So the Kerr WMA, established in 1950, purchased for wildlife research and demonstration. As a land base, we operate as an experiment station from everything from natural resources, soil, plants, health, all those things, endangered birds, white-tailed deer, a lot of things. I don't have time to talk about all that today. But I did want to throw out the hunting perspective here just because of where we're at today in front of the commission here. Early hunting efforts around the Kerr WMA in 1916. Keep this in mind. This may blow your mind. I don't know. But in the early 1900s and 1880s, deer were relatively rare. It was a big deal to see one or two deer on a day's hunt or a 2 days hunt in this part of the hill country. They were relatively rare. 1925 and 30, legislature passed a law prohibiting the harvest of female deer. That's a whole other subject of how the North American model, the Texas model, and all those things function together. I don't have time for that today. Come see us on October 3rd. 1937, the Moran Ranch did start limiting hunting. They valued the resource in white-tailed deer. 47 and 48, harvest a few deer. And in 49, harvest a few more deer. This is a good example here of the economics in whitetail hunting. And you can look up hundreds and thousands of other examples of where it is today. But a good example of how that kind of starts in West Kerr County, the value of wildlife on property, right? And this one in deer. The Kerr WMA runs its first hunt in 54. From an agency perspective, the Kerr WMA was the first piece of property to run a public hunt in the state of Texas. It's right here in Kerr County. The first public hunt was done here in your backyard. And then the first doe hunt, we'll talk more about deer management next month. The first doe hunt was done in 1983. So there's a progression here over time, establishing hunting as a model, as also in favor of healthy land. So here we go back to our friend, the ash juniper or cedar. Cedar, like I said, was a pretty rare plant. It is native to this area. And what we find is with the treatment of this landscape, a lot of heavy livestock grazing, the reduction or suppression of wildfires. Fires were part of this natural system in the past. We see juniper or cedar really kind of take a foothold and grow from there. And the easiest way to put it is we grew a lot of cedar, and we still grow a lot of cedar today because nothing really likes to eat it. And that's it. That's kind of it has nothing to do with it's non-native or it was brought in by somebody else from somewhere else. It's a plant that's been here a long time. It's just in an abundance today because we have a lot of mouths on the landscape. So, and fire is a part of that as well. So going through cedar and cedar encroachment, this is just a little economic model, a walk through time of what the Kerr WMA just prior to ownership and through ownership does in harvest of juniper or cutting of juniper posts and all those different things. That's pretty neat to pretty darn neat to look at and see how that transpired over time, just how much cedar this country grew. And by 1950, you see some institutions come out that were basically a marketing administration program at USDA to help landowners deal with the problem. Bulldozing and chaining was the big thing at that period in time, which we've changed. We've grown since then, I'll put it that way. So here's your statement. By 1950 and the 1960s, land managers were dealing with the product of their management system. Okay, there's always a reaction to your management profile or what you're doing on the land. There's a reaction there, and that's the big one here for West Kerr County or Kerr County in general at that period in time. So the WMA does the same thing, starts removing a lot of large acreages of cedar, cutting and chaining. If you come out and see us, you'll see some of those historic landscapes, what they looked like today and why they look like they do today. There were contracts done over time. Cost keeps getting more and more expensive. And that's kind of the breaking point you see on the Kerr WMA and resource conservation. Try to be very economical with the time we put into land management because our land managers need to be economical as well. You see this philosophy start to come about in the late 1960s and early 1970s, and that is searching for a cure and stop treating those symptoms. All right, so let's go back a little bit and talk through that. A couple of men I want to acknowledge today: Donnie Harmel on the Kerr area from 1968 to 1997, and Bill Armstrong from 1973 to 2005. A couple of quotes there, you can read them. These guys were instrumental. Not only did they take risks in land management to learn, but they were instrumental in changing that program and treating this land a little bit differently. And the products that we can produce today from these mindsets right here are incredible, absolutely incredible. So that philosophy changes in 1968. The Kerr builds a high fence. And the fence was not built to keep deer in, it was built to keep deer out. And if you watch the deer population on the Kerr WMA after 1968, becomes much more attainable in maintaining the number of mouths to the number of plants, that ratio that we have to maintain. That's why the fence exists today, to maintain that population at what we call carrying capacity. We don't overuse those plants. In the 1970s, you see a grazing system using cows studied and become implemented to more or less mimic what bison did here historically. High intensity, low frequency is that acronym up there, HILF. So a lot of animals, lots of cows in an area for a short period of time and a lot of rest following that grazing event. It's nothing more than an organized system, an organized way to run cows. And these things start to burr. There's genesis, the genesis of those things come out of the Kerr WMA at that period in time. In 1979, you see fire, prescribed fire. So again here, as I started this today, our human minds, we have to measure things, we have to understand things. There's institutional knowledge passed along over time. Fire was studied. Fire was utilized in controlled areas, and what burrs out of that is what we call today fire prescriptions or prescribed fire. that started in 1979 and is still used on the WMA today. In 1997, we changed the paradigm of mechanical clearing, and all those fancy machines that we see, those skid steers, the innovation of those. You've seen a lot of those with the flood recovery in Kerr County doing their jobs, utilizing shears and a skid steer to manage some of that brush or juniper by cutting it, implementing that axe type of a tool. We still use that today. In a way, a change in a management system burrs that through this period in time, and it's all about the creative use of those tools. It really is. And it results in a lot of change and a lot of final product that I'll walk you through a little bit today. One of those being white-tailed deer, a big part of our management program and our research program on the wildlife management area. You can see change not only in land and land health, but you see change in the wildlife associated with that land. Things get healthier and get bigger or get better over time. And it's all part of how healthy that land is. So the Kerr WMA, I don't expect you to see these numbers. This is just a quick shot of what I'm talking about. There's an association of wildlife, and this is 4.5-year-old field-dressed weights of deer from our public hunts. Down here on the bottom, these are our weaned calf weights over time on the Kerr WMA. They continue to go up, and it's all related to what's feeding these things, and that's the total number of browse, grass, and forb plant species on the WMA. Those things continue to get better and healthier. So everybody likes pictures, and I'm going to walk you through a few of them. I'm not going to try not to throw that many more numbers at you. This is, so we're going to look at some aspects on the WMA early in the day and then kind of now things. So that then and now example. This is the middle trap. So the middle trap's a pasture on the north end of the wildlife management area. This is what it looked like in 1952. And again, they're in respect to the things that I introduced with that philosophy of change and implementing things like fire and grazing systems and sustainable harvest of deer, we see plant communities change. That's what it looks like today. Plot 6, this is one of those study plots that was built and in the 1950s. Come out and see us in October. I'll talk more about that then. This is what it looked like in 1956. We were talking about tick research a minute ago with USDA. This is where these plots is where they did a lot of that tick research in the 1980s and 90s. But anyway, that's what it looked like in 56 and what it looks like today. This is the love pasture in 1951 and what it looks like today. This is the red wine pasture. So this pasture is just outside of the main piece of the Kerr WMA. I would consider this pasture an unmanaged pasture. Okay, so not managed at all. No fire over there, no grazing. Really no management at all. This is what it looked like in 1954. And that's what it looks like today. No management at all. This is a great one. This is my favorite spot on the WMA. Plot 9. The guys were smart enough when they started the burning programs and grazing programs and all those things to make a pasture and call it a control. And they picked the best range condition area they could for their control. This is what it looked like in 1959. Mixed grass, brush, weeds, forbs, pretty. It was pretty cool. Best range condition on the WMA. No management since the 1950s, and that's what it looks like today. So there's a relationship in your impact as a human being here and a land manager in land health and quality, and its relationship to wildlife health or quality or livestock health or quality. And these are the implications you can see and find and learn about from the WMA and its history. Here's the love pasture, a little more modern picture in 1980. As fire kind of starts to roll through and we use it a lot more, and the grazing system is turning a lot of things, and that's what it looks like today. Took that picture a couple of weeks ago. In 1986, this is the love pasture. That's all yellow Indian grass right there. Barbara, you recognize that one. This like a day after this picture was taken, there was almost 7 inches of rainfall that fell on the WMA in one night. Very, well, I don't want to say similar to our catastrophic events that happened in July this year, but let's just say a lot of rain in one spot for a short period of time. Like 2-point-something million gallons of water hit this little bitty spot right here. And bottom of the hill down there is a flood gap, little wire fence flood gap. That flood gap didn't even blow out. The water didn't even blow it out. The water didn't even move the fence. It kind of gives you the implication is what this picture should do for you is the sponge effect that we have in the hill country or can have in the hill country, getting water infiltrated into the ground. And these grassland systems are built for that. This is Bear Creek Draw, where it enters into the WMA, Bear Creek water gap. Pretty wide, a lot of rock. You can imagine if water's running down that system and stream, how fast water's gonna be moving. This is Wilson's water gap when it exits the WMA. When water exits the WMA, a lot cleaner, a lot slower, a lot different looking as it works its way through the wildlife management area, and those soil and sediment deposits are finding homes. That water is not moving as fast and is not moving with as much sediment and debris we're capturing on the WMA. White-tailed deer have changed a lot over time. This is then, so back in the day, 50s and 60s, as Bill would always say, Hill Country had probably the best buzzard management program in the United States of America. And they were feeding them white-tailed deer. We were losing 40 to 60% of our deer population every year to malnutrition. Every year in that period of time. And we've gone from that to what you see. There's an example there, obviously a high quality mature buck harvested by a youth hunter. But the point I want to make is there's a difference in the quality of deer and the health of deer. It's related to land health. Black-capped vireo. Many of you may be very knowledgeable about that bird. A bird that comes up and nests almost exclusively in the hill country. And it was endangered, listed as endangered in the 1980s. It was delisted in 2018. Delisted. These are the territories on the WMA back in the day. This is probably in the early 80s. They're a territorial bird. The male makes a little territory. They're easy to map. And that's what they look like today. And there's its trends over time from the 1980s up into today. Golden cheek warbler, another endangered bird. This one's an interesting one. Everything's interesting to me, but the warbler probably was a bird, if you remember me mentioning thousands of years ago, the earth cooled a little bit and we were in kind of that spruce coniferous type of a forested system. This was probably a bird, this was probably like the heyday for the warbler. Loves forested systems. It likes your mature ash juniper. That's where it likes to make home and come up here and nest. So the point of all that, too much cedar, too little cedar, cedar has a home in the hill country. But the implication of too much and too little is our job to manage, and there's implications to all that stuff. The warbler does exist on the WMA. We have pockets of juniper on the WMA that we maintain purposefully, and its territories and numbers over time. Towbush fishhook cactus, another example. It's not all about deer or cows. There's a little cactus out there that pretty hard to see and pretty hard to find. I put it in this slide and program just to give you an example of other things going on in the hill country. And this plant and this management system does pretty well as well. So, as I started, Our job is research and demonstration. Outreach is part of it. Been giving outreach programs for years. That's Donnie Harmel down here in this picture, giving a program probably on deer management in the plots back in the late 70s. There's Evan McCoy and Deanna Pfeffer giving programs today. You want to come and learn, give us a shout. As you can imagine, facilities have grown as well over time. This is a picture of the headquarters area in the 1960s and the headquarters area, I think around 21, 22 right there. So I'm about done. I'm done. We're involved in a lot. As Barbara introduced me, in the hill country, Kerr and Mason Mountain Wildlife Management Area. Here's the montage or the photo, just group of photos about all the things we do and get to do, whether it's white-tailed deer research, prescribed fire, invasive species, exotic management, feral pig control and development, collared peccary, Texas horned lizard, warblers, mature deer movements and how that affects our hunting public. We get to be involved in all those things. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to work. And it's absolutely a pleasure to be in front of you today. So we celebrate 75 years. The WMA does this year. I think it was in this program. I think it was August of 1950. So we're a little more than a month past that. We've been blessed to have the facilities improve over time. This is the conference center on the WMA. If you come and see us, you'll get to be a part of that. A new hunter check station and conservation center right next to it. The power we have to do good work and provide good information is really high and very, very special to be a part of it. So with that, I'll leave you be. I'm probably at 40 minutes, who knows. Doing okay? Doing all right? I'll leave you be, and if anybody has any questions or anything, so.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
What was the Boneyard Massacre? I've never heard of that before.
There were a couple, well, would somebody with more knowledge? I'll tell you mine. A couple of early settlers in the 1850s traveled up the North Fork of the Guadalupe River from Kerrville. I forget why. And they got basically ambushed. I think there was like 4 or 5 of them. One of them made it back almost alive to Kerrville before he passed away and expired basically along the river. So Boneyard Draw is just west of the wildlife management area, and it's a place that it's above the headwaters just a little bit, but there's a pool of water up there. And that pool of water, when archaeologists go explore around that pool of water and all the soils and things, Native Americans had been gathering there for a long, long, long time. It was a gathering place. And so for whatever reason that day when they went up there were Native Americans there and they didn't like it. And they got ambushed over the deal. So look it up. That's my knowledge of it. I know there's experts in this room, so it's dangerous territory for me to go any farther than that. Yes, sir.
A few years ago, we had the chronic wasting disease.
Yes, sir.
Deer,
Yeah.
And you eliminated all the deer, as I understand it, on the managed area.
We did not. We did not do that. That's a falsehood that continues to just grow, and we did not do that. Go ahead with your question, then I'll.
Okay, so you didn't do it. So my follow-up question was, did you reintroduce traditional deer genetics into that area?
We did not do that either. So I'll make it as quick, as simple as I can. We found in chronic wasting disease, there's a prion that causes the disease. It's the agent of chronic wasting disease in deer. In our white-tailed deer research facility, it's a 20-acre facility that we house deer in that don't get released to the wild. They're basically study deer. And we've had that out there since the 1970s. We discovered prions that can cause and were causing chronic wasting disease in that deer herd. So what we decided to do, it was a very, very early detection. We had what we could term low loading. So there was a very low prevalence of prions in the facility. We used early detection tools to kind of figure all that out and find all that out. We collected those deer out of that facility. We did collect those deer out of the facility. And we put them in a test tube in a lab, and we're conducting that research now to add more information to chronic wasting disease. I'm almost finished with that, and Irene, hopefully you and I can get together and do a do some really good things with that information. So those deer, their job is wildlife research in our facility. And whether they're on the hoof or they're in the lab, their job is wildlife research, and that is exactly what they're doing today. So on the wildlife management area, there's 600 deer out there. They're alive, they're healthy, they're doing great. In addition to collecting those deer and doing the work in the lab, we also chose and decided to do that to make sure we were safe until we understood exactly what we were dealing with in the facility. So we did it early, we did it soon, but we did that so we could put those deer into research projects in a laboratory and make sure our wild deer on the Kerr stayed safe, as well as wild deer around us and neighboring properties stayed safe. So, yes, ma'am.
The wild pigs that are prevalent in other areas that are such a problem, are they in this area as well?
There are a lot of wild pigs in Kerr County, yes, ma'am.
It's a place I used to live, they would hunt.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to hunt them, they didn't do it. Did they do that here?
You can hunt wild pigs, yes, ma'am, absolutely. And they're invariably pockets of higher numbers or lower numbers of pigs. Traditionally, you'll find pigs more associated with riparian areas than upland drier sites, but pigs are pretty dynamic in the way they can adapt to just about anything and live just about anywhere. So you find them pretty much ubiquitously across Kerr County. And hunting is something that's by all means encouraged and legal and all those things. Pigs, though, tend to produce more babies than hunting could ever overcome in reduction, right? And so come see us on the 3rd. We're going to talk about pigs and pig research. But the problem lies within, you've got to get about 70% of population control on pigs to really make any gain in reduction in pigs. And hunting, it invariably sometimes can't do that. And so we need more tools to do it. And we trap pigs and we, hunt pigs and all these different things. Another reason we're working on different types of control techniques for pigs to help land stewards out and gain the control they want. So hunting's legal for pigs and is done very widely throughout Texas and the United States. Yes, sir.
In that same vein, I had heard of this sodium nitrite on pigs that they've used in other places, maybe Australia, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's not being used here. A very humane way of killing hogs. But why can't we use some of that? Because the hogs are so prolific and they tear up all the riverine and every other place so badly.
I appreciate the question. You just broke the barrier for me. The other control techniques are toxicants. And one of the toxicants that we've been collaborating with USDA on and developing at the Kerr WMA is sodium nitrite for the control of pigs. The barrier, if you will, on nitrite or any toxicant for pigs, there's a limit. You have to get that product registered with the EPA. So it has to be labeled and registered, just like Roundup is labeled and registered for use in Texas.